there is a tariff of 25%, the auto component company that has profitability of only about 6, 7, 8, 9%, they cannot absorb more than 8, 9%. Your customers and your consumers paying lot more money because of this tariff, and hence you would be impacted with inflation. I'm hoping that this sense would prevail in the US and US administration as well. And hence, when ultimately the negotiations settle down, the tariffs would be a lot more reasonable and a lot more acceptable for both sides. If you look at it, Pune exports engineering goods and auto components along with many other things. When you look at 800 plus districts of India, Pune ranks number 1 when it comes to engineering goods exports. So I thought I'll ask those companies as they export lot to US. First of all, many of them told that as the impact of tariff would start today US time, which means possibly on 8th in India, which is tomorrow, we would get to see much of the impact on what's happening. However, some of the members did mention that on their CBP form, one of the custom forms, it's already printed 25%. Right? So it's implemented in some sense, or it's getting implemented in some sense. Now, what is the impact of this? There are one of the two things that can happen. When there is a tariff of 25%, the auto component company that has profitability of only about 6, 7, 8, 9%, they cannot absorb more than 8, 9%, right? Nobody's going to do business by making losses. What does it mean? A, they pass on the additional cost, tariff as additional cost, to their customer in USA, which means the customers in USA will have to pay more. Imagine an auto component produced in Pune, bought by another company in US, and they pay 25% more. And after that, their consumer who is buying the car pays 25% more to the extent of that component. The consumer is going to complain about it. The consumer is going to feel the heat of inflation. And that's not going to be good for the US either. What is the second alternative? Second alternative is the company to whom the Pune company is exporting this auto component finds alternative. Now, what's the alternative? One is Europe. Now, Europe also, even when there was zero duty, custom duty for them, even then they were not competitive vis-a-vis us. Now you have put about 15% duty on them. Now they'll not be competitive against us. So who would be the alternative to India? Maybe China. But US has established policy of reducing dependence on China. If you want to reduce dependence on China, if you don't have any other alternative, then the only option left for you is your customers and your consumers paying lot more money because of this tariff. And hence, you would be impacted with inflation. I'm hoping that this sense would prevail in the US and US administration as well. And hence, when ultimately the negotiations settle down, the tariffs would be a lot more reasonable and a lot more acceptable for both sides. That's how I see it. I'm very, very glad to see how Indian government is responding to it. Against one narrative which looks very, very chaotic, Indian government is very calm, composed, and responding to it one step at a time. So I think that's a wonderful thing. By tomorrow, we would hear from even more number of companies as to what exactly happened on their CBP or the other forms in terms of the duty charged on them.
So, sir, what are the sectors who will be impacted? Of course, if we take that it's implemented, 25% is already implemented, remaining 25% will be hit in next 20 days. So, which are those sectors who are most impacted?
If you look at the sectors, what do we export, right? And those are the sectors that will be impacted. Gem and jewelry. If you look at, much of that happens from Navi Mumbai or Surat belt, more of that belt. Pharmaceutical, there is a whole lot of it happening in and around Pune, in Maharashtra as well, the pharmaceutical companies. Not vaccines, but pharmaceutical is included now. And then engineering goods, which includes auto component. It's a major industry in India, in Maharashtra, in Pune. So those are the sectors that will be impacted little more than the other sectors because they have direct exposure to the US, direct exports to the US happening, and hence those would be impacted.
the analysis which you're making, it suggests that the US will be receiving end more than India. Is that
It's both ways, right? It's both ways. See, look, businesses don't like uncertainty. Businesses at both ends do not like uncertainty. Are we impacted? Yes, we are impacted. How are we impacted? At least in the short to medium term, we will be impacted because there's a whole lot of uncertainty. Some of the customers in the US are asking us to ship it fast. Some of the customers are saying, hey, let's hold on to it. So the so-called supply chain is getting further destabilized, and that's not good for us, right? But it is equally not good for the US because if the increase in tariff is passed on as increased cost to the US customer and hence US consumers, they would sense the inflation and they won't be happy about it either, right? So it's not good for either side, and I'm sure that the better sense would prevail in that administration as well.
what government should do?
I think government is doing wonderfully well. Government is doing wonderfully well in terms of being very decisive in communicating that we would continue to take decisions in the interest of India. For example, while there was one order coming from US, we signed what we had to sign with Russia, what is in the best interest of India. And that's all that any government of the day should do, and I'm glad that's what it's doing. And it's responding while there's a narrative with certain chaos around it coming from Washington, D.C. The narrative from the South Bloc, narrative from the Raisina Hills is way a lot more composed. Right? And that's what is our way of doing it, and that's what we should continue to do it.
So one more question. Prime Minister also, since we are talking about the government, Prime Minister made a very strong statement today. He said that the farmers' interest will be paramount, whatever is happening right now. How do you see his statement? And it's a clear message.
Oh, I think it's very important, right? I mean, look, given the number of farmers we have in India, number of people dependent on farm sector, it must be protected. Now, of course, we need to find it out if there are certain peripheral areas that do not impact majority of farmers or most of the farmers or farmer community per se, they could discuss as part of their negotiation. But what's core to the farming community, that can't be compromised. And I don't think it needs to be compromised either. We are in the middle of the negotiation. What's changed, right? For many decades, most of the global economies negotiated in a certain manner. The current administration in the US has changed the way we negotiate it, and hence it's looking a lot more chaotic. That doesn't mean the 25% is certainty. That doesn't mean 50% is a certainty, because there is 21 days for that additional 25%. It doesn't even mean 25% will be certainty. It's just that we haven't signed it yet. We haven't agreed to that yet. And we haven't yet played all of our cards yet. So I'm sure that while we are in the middle of the negotiation, if we keep cool and composed and continue to watch out what's happening over the next few days, when it settles, it will settle at a lot more reasonable level. That's my hope and expectation.